Hi, my name is Todd Gearman, CEO of Focus Training, and I'm here to talk with you today about sustainable culture change. I sometimes like to think about culture as if I'm standing on the bank of a river, and if I look at that river, I can view it in one of two ways. Either it's this large, immovable object, something that would be difficult to cross, that's very powerful, but if I think carefully about it, I can recognize that within that water, there are millions or trillions of individual droplets that are working together that form one cohesive unit that over time can really move mountains. And corporate culture is a lot the same way, where we can think of the individual decisions, the people, the leadership, and situations that have happened over time to really form what we call culture. So I'd like to explore some options or some thoughts about how to change that culture in positive ways. For a lot of us, we think our culture is great, but we can often think, well, maybe there have been some times that were better, or in an effort to continuously improve, we can say, what are some things we can do to make positive change? So when I think about culture change, I like to think of it with the three A's. The first A stands for assessment, the second is for alignment, and the third is for act or action. So let's first talk about assessment. And this assessment can be like any individual assessment that you might make of yourself, of a colleague, of an employee, something like that. The idea here is to ask the right questions. And so I'm going to give you a few recommendations. I like to start wide and then work down and get a little bit more narrow. So the first question is, where are we today versus 10 years ago? Is our culture the same? And if it isn't, how is it different and why is it different? The why is really the powerful one in there. So if we can focus on some of those things, that will help us to understand where we once were, where we are today, and where we want to go. I like to sometimes try this versus that. So are we an organization that focuses more on task or more on people? Are we an organization that focuses on being creative, or do we encourage being more structured? Are we the same as we were? Are we different than we were? So the this versus that will sometimes help you to get a good measure as to what our corporate culture is at the moment. The last suggestion I have is something that I recommend to individuals. When I'm working with them on goal setting or doing some coaching, I often ask them to pull out their cell phones, open up their Photos app, and see who or what are in those photos. And as we start to scroll through, it becomes apparent pretty quickly what is most important to that person, which helps in the goal setting process. We can do that on a corporate scale as well, or organizational scale, but we don't have a photo roll to look at. So instead, we will look at where are investments being made in terms of time, people, energy, money, and if we can identify some of those sources, that helps us to determine, again, where our culture is right now. And that's part of the assessment process. We then need to start to say, how can we align our culture in a way that is either the same or different than it is right now? So when we think about alignment, historically that has meant a one-way street. If I'm at the top of the organization and I say that these three things are important, they become the most important. Now that may have worked well in the Industrial Revolution, but it doesn't really work very well in the 21st century today. So when we look at alignment today, I recommend thinking about it as a two-way street. And definitely opinions from folks who have been a part of the organization for a long time, and their actions and their reactions are a very important part of the culture of that organization. But just as importantly are some of the folks at the bottom of the org chart, your new hires as you're onboarding. What can they contribute? And we start to think about our 21st century organizations in companies like Google or Facebook or 3M, and they really take special care to make sure that they are fostering innovation, that they are building relationships with new employees to keep them on for the long term, that they're tapping into that youthful energy and experience that they may have that doesn't directly align with the current culture, but will ultimately start to move that culture in some really positive ways. So this two-way street is something that I recommend during the alignment phase. The next step and final step is action or acts. And so there are 4 specific actions that I'll recommend that you follow. The first is hiring the right people. And I know that can sound cliche, but the idea of having the right person for the right role is pretty important, as you probably already know. My challenge here is to think about it in a way that doesn't necessarily align with your current culture, but where do you want your culture to be 5 years or 10 years from now? And can this new person within your organization help to move it along in a positive and professional way? The second action that I recommend is through teaching and training. By giving folks all throughout the organization an opportunity to learn and to grow, you're going to expose them to new ideas, new concepts, and things that will definitely create sustainable culture change. The third is empowering your managers to identify what motivates employees. When we think about people in management responsibilities or with management responsibilities, we want them to understand the people that they work with. And this understanding comes through an idea of motivation or lenses, motivational theory, if you will. How can I motivate a person to perform at a higher level and get better results? So helping your managers to do that is another action you can take. And lastly, it's rewarding success. So finding ways to reach out to individuals. It may be a gift card. It may be some extra paid time off. It may be simple recognition for a job well done. But the idea of rewarding success all through the organization can really help you to create a positive culture that people will embrace and want to be a part of. So again, I recommend through using these 3 steps, assessment, alignment, and action, you can create positive and sustainable culture change within your organization.